Ironside will not be seen tonight, so we may bring you the following special program.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Do you really wanna take it? Snowboard, come on down and sing. And make sure you don't cross the streets. A chance to meet the stars from your favorite things. Bring your friends, cosplay for days. I was to use the ink like a magic wand. I made a great grab a seat, pose a crazy. A comic fans and art, but you can swear it starts. Do you really wanna take it? Terrific comes the best around. Do you really wanna take it? Grab your friends and come on down. From the shows you love, t-shirts, socks, the games and mugs and you. I'm cosplaying with your armor on. Go moves a bunch of stones. Do you really wanna take it? Terrific comes the place to be. Do you really wanna take it? Kids down to 7 getting free. Friends and legends too. They're all here and wanna meet. Assemble for 3 days of fun. It's terrific on a Megan son.
All right. Here we go. Good. I like that face. It's a very Mo Howard face right there, Rich. What's the matter with you? Quiet, you. All right, here we go. Always happy to go to the Svengoolie Sanctum Sanctorum and check in with everybody's favorite horror host, Rich Koz, a.k.a. Svengoolie. Rich, great to see you, man. Welcome back to Word Balloon.
Thank you. Always great to see you, John. We always have a good time at C2E2 when we have our panels and such. And you're a true professional. I appreciate that.
Well, you know, it means a lot to me, man, that you come back and we have these great conversations, both at the conventions and when we talk here at Club Svengoolie. I don't know what the cover charges at Club Svengoolie.
I haven't known if we've even covered that. So when you can't cover a cover charge, what do? You close the cover on the coffin.
Well, speaking of covers, we certainly should talk about this great 2-part anthology through Frank Miller Presents, the Svengoolie comic book. It turned out great, at least issue 1, which I've seen. I saw the Chris Jones cover. I saw the Art Baltazar cover, and the interiors are terrific. I was just telling your producer, Jim Roach, I think you guys all did a great job writing the comic, and Franco had a hand in writing the comic too, I believe.
Yes, he did. He helped with the dialogue stuff.
Cool. No, honestly, man, I thought it turned out great. And I've even been reading fan reviews, and people are like, listen, if you're not familiar with Sven's show, you're still in for a treat because it's a really funny book and it's a great horror comedy. Let's talk. I know the backstory, but for viewers and listeners, they may not know how this deal with Frank Miller came about. How did this comic happen?
Well, I think you have to go back to years ago, out of all places, C2E2. I think we might have talked about this before. I was doing one of my signings, and Jim is walking down the line, just, trying to keep people's spirits up as they're waiting a half hour or whatever. And he runs into this one guy, and he's talking to him. It turns out it's Dan DiDio, who was in charge of DC at the time. And he was waiting in line to meet me, which was amazing. But we got to know each other, and then from him came the Svengoolie Meets the DC Universe book, which we were really proud of. That was not something that was for sale. It was something we handed out at appearances only. And I was very proud of that. The fact that I got to, do some of the plotting and write dialogue for it. That was like a dream come true for me. So now time passes, and Dan is now with Frank Miller Presents. And he said, we always wanted to do more books. He said, what if we do, one or two through Frank Miller Presents? And of course, we were all for it. We enjoyed working with him and, the freedom that he gave us. And he said, come up with some ideas. So I gave him a whole page of ideas. And we took some of them and actually combined them for the book. And we had the support of our company here. And here it is, and I'm very proud of it. Again, I think it turned out great. I enjoy all the artwork and the help from everybody to make it, as you said, a good book. It's not just for fans of the show. It's nice to hear comics fans saying that they enjoy it, and that means a lot to me.
No question. And I was telling you as well, the great reviews people are giving it. And everybody's in this. All your favorite Sven sidekicks like Kerwin and Tombstone and Body Sorrell.
Yes.
One of my favorite names for one of your characters.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Maury Amsterdam smiling in heaven right now, knowing that you're
I
acknowledging
certainly
that one.
hope so. Just the fact that we always have him saying, "Hey, Rob," keeps that going, I think.
Absolutely. And man, Chris Jones, everybody that's involved. Jill Thompson, did she do Franco sent me the interiors.
Mhm.
And did Jill do a cover or did she do a pinup? What did she do?
I believe that on some of the custom ones for the comic shops, they used what was her drawing that she made for one of our T-shirts. And
Okay.
that was the cover art for, was it Graham Crackers?
That was First Aid on.
First Aid.
There you go.
Sorry, yeah.
We hear Jim in the background, everybody. And Jim, you can pop on camera as well if you'd like, because truly, I know you're one of the main contributors to the book.
Yeah, make
So-
a guest appearance here.
There you go. Yeah,
All right,
That's
good.
enough,
I
okay.
gotta go. I gotta go.
we're keeping him from lunch. I understand. So totally understand.
Yeah,
No,
and Jill, of course, did the stuff on the interior, which is really great.
Oh, great. Okay,
All
one of
the
her.
stuff.
Yeah.
Just so impressive. Chris Jones and Art, all the stuff in there. I just love the way it looks. And I was wondering, if people were going to be bothered, though I loved it, the change in art styles through it. But people are great with it, and that's great to see.
They always say with animation, a lot of times the animated movies are even less than 90 minutes on average. And as I understand it, they're like, oh, your eye gets tired watching a certain style. Now, obviously in comics, it is different, but no, I thought it was great. And in fact, the chapters of the story kind of allow for that change in art and everything.
Yeah.
So I think that's great. You got a great Sven killer robot.
Yes, the Svenbot
Yes.
that is put together by Dr. Kopay. And, that was one of the things on my original list, just the idea that there was a Svenbot that was going to take over the show. And we incorporated, I had written down, maybe we can do some, kind of background on some of the characters. So we combined a lot of the stuff, as I said, and built it all into one story.
Rich, this is literally, I'm not just saying this because you're on. I know it's flying off the shelves. I know God, as I told you 2 Fridays ago, you were in Skokie doing a signing, and I know again, I think they sold out of the book there. Can people, beyond getting it hopefully at comic stores, can they get it at your website?
There's been talk about that. I don't have anything definite on it, but it certainly is a possibility. So if you just, keep track of things, if you check my weekly blog at svengoolie.com, we'll certainly mention if it's going to happen. And of course, you can check the store tab too.
Okay, Dan's a good friend, and as a comedy connoisseur, I always think Dan sounds a bit like Jackie Mason's older brother. Hey, how are you? All right, yeah, we're gonna do this.
I think you're right. I think he knows all about it, and perhaps if he keeps talking, he'll be able to do the same thing as long as he doesn't give the finger to Ed Sullivan.
Exactly, absolutely. You see, this is why we talk, Rich. We know these things. I love what I also love about Frank Miller Presents. It's a paper only product. It's
Right.
not. I don't know if they made an exception for you, but yeah, it's no. If you want the book, you got to go to the store to get it, which I think is great for comic stores. And also, people want to buy this and they want to meet you and have you sign it. Jim as well, and Chris and everybody that's involved. I think it's wonderful. It reminds me again, old Chicago references. Remember back in the 80s, the Loop had their
Sure.
comic book.
Yes.
Yeah, attaboy. Yeah, man. And no, in a good way, it reminds me of that as well. I do. I think this is wonderful, and I think it's a great item. Like you said, you had your DC book that you handed out, but this is worth the cover price, if not more.
Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I think we've talked before. I've been a fan of comics since I was a kid. I still have my early 60s comics at home. And I love, having them on paper, being able to read them. I like the fact that it has the very nice binding too, not just staples. It's a quality item just as far as a book. And then, when you add in all the great artwork and everything, it's like, it's kind of, I don't know how else to put it, almost like an experience for you to have the book. And, I don't know for sure if they're going to ever put it digitally into, resources or something, but I'm happy that we have it, and it's such a nice quality book.
I have a feeling, along with some of Frank's classic ideas like Sin City and some of the other things that he's going back to with this new company, I really think this is going to be a big seller if it hasn't already been. I mean, again, it's only been out for a couple weeks now, but I know anecdotally that the response has been great, and because again, all of you and the Tsven writers are writing the stories, so it captures the flavor of your show, and this wonderful art too. I want to ask you about your comic collection back in the day. Who I'm sure the obvious people. I mean, well, first and foremost, I don't care about the horse race, but I will admit that I think my first awareness of comics were the DC heroes. Marvel came later for me. How were you buying comics back in the day? Were you a DC kid or a Marvel kid or both?
Originally, around where I lived, it was very hard to find comics. And most of the ones, my first superhero ones, were all DC. And before that, the stuff that I liked was the Donald Duck ones by Carl Barks. I was a big fan of those, and you could tell back then, good storylines and fun artwork. And then, early 60s, as I said, I really got into the DC comics and had, Superman, Batman, The Flash, Green Lantern. I was really into them, and it wasn't until later in the 60s that I was even aware of Marvel, because they did not sell them. They used to sell in the grocery stores these 4-packs of the DC books. And
Yes.
usually it was 2 or 3 good ones, and then like a real stinker in there, like Sugar and Spike, or hey, the Bob Hope comic, ladies and gentlemen. And it's but you'd still get a couple of good ones at least, because they put those on the outside to lure you into it. But there weren't that many places with spinner racks that were around where we lived. So, you didn't get the chance to pick them up.
Wow, you see, we had a local drugstore that had a spinner rack, but we had stores with those. You see, by the time I was buying, it was a 3-pack. But you're absolutely right. It was like, oh, 2 really good ones, and then yeah, like you said, the stinkers. That's awesome, Sugar and Spike and Bob Hope. Isn't that crazy? I mean, and
Oh,
Jerry
yeah.
Lewis comics too.
Yes, we'd get those too. And it was like, okay. And then there were some that were just okay. Like, you get a Tomahawk, Western
Sure.
one. And I think Black Hawk too, which weren't bad either. I didn't mind those. But when you'd get some of those, wacky funsters there, it was like, okay, it was like having a whole book of Henry Boltinoff and his, Super Squirrel or whatever the heck. It was like, okay, good.
You're killing me. That's fantastic, man. As I got older, I've appreciated the DC Westerns and the war comics. Had the, I don't know as far as old timers, because you're certainly a friend to the comics community. A lot of your viewers are comic creators, but I don't know how many old creators. I got to meet Joe Kubert a couple times,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, and I mean, what a master and what a sweetheart of a guy. The guy, and actually, you'll appreciate. I don't know if you knew this, back in the 50s, he worked for a company called St. John's that made Three Stooges 3D
Oh,
comics.
sure. I remember seeing those actually. Not, when they first came out, but in later years, people have shown them to me. It's very impressive. And I think there's some reprints actually that are out now of those
Oh yeah,
comics.
they go to the well because they're fun. And as you know, the Stooges are timeless. I love that the Stooges make a cameo in this first
Yeah.
issue of the Svengoolie comic, and we get an Art Balthazar depiction of the Stooges in there, caveman Stooges, which is pretty appropriate. So
Yeah,
did you ever
definitely
meet?
so.
Did you
Especially
ever
since
meet any?
they're, no,
I'm sorry. You finish your thought, Rich. I'm jumping on you.
no, I said that obviously the Stooges are our opening act every week on Me TV, so it seemed appropriate to have them in there. If you're asking if I ever met any of them, no.
Not the Stooges, but actually the old time creators beyond the contemporary friends that you have in the business.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Oh, no worries.
Say
No,
that again.
I was asking if you ever met guys like Joe Kubert, Stan Lee, some of the old timers from comics.
Oh, I want to say if it's real old timers, maybe Joe Staten, or is it Stanton? I'm not sure how to
Joe
pronounce
Staten,
his name.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And we met Tony Isabella, who's
Sure.
a big fan of the show. It's always cool to meet them, and getting a little more contemporary. George Perez, he was a big fan. He came here to visit us and was just thrilled to be able to be in the studio with us. Such a nice man, and
Yes.
what a loss. Just
absolutely.
terrific. I remember he sent me a book of of his various works, and on the inside cover, I've shown this on air. He drew. He had asked me, "Oh, who are some of your favorite superheroes?" And I said, "Oh, Batman, Captain America," and he sent me. He had drawn on the inside cover Batman and Captain America looking through a hole in a wall that they had broken through, and inside there was my coffin. And that just blew me away. It was amazing.
That Rich, you got to put that on social media if you haven't already at some point.
Yeah,
Take a
I
photo of
have.
that.
I've put it on there, and we've shown it on the show as well. But
Yeah, and I understand that absolutely, man. That's great. Wow. Have there, and again, the laundry list of celebrities that are Svengoolie fans, and that's always fun when we do panels. And you mentioned people like Mark Hamill, or I remember when Joel from the original Mystery Science Theater. I was
Mhm.
getting ready to video, and maybe I've told you this story before. You might remember it anyway. I was getting ready to do my first video interview with you backstage in the autograph section at C2E2, and Joel walks up and he's like, "Can I talk to Rich for a second?" I'm like, "Of course." I'm like, I know what's happening right now. I'm going to get out of the way, and it was so great. And I believe he told you that Jerry Seinfeld is a Sven fan as well. I remember him saying, a lot of my LA comedians, and I thought he said including Jerry Seinfeld, are big fans of yours. Have there been newer celebrities in the last couple of years where you're like, "Oh man, there's another one. That's great."
Oh, sure. Annette O'Toole and Michael McKeon are fans.
Great.
Just recently, I've been in touch a lot with Joe Mantegna, because we have in common being in this area, but he's been a fan of the show since, my old shows. And he got in touch with me. And in fact, he came into town a couple of months ago, and we actually met up at a place in Berwyn that's owned by his brother-in-law, and got to spend some time. And it was so cool because, first of all, he's such a nice guy, amazingly talented, but it felt like, talking to an old friend, which was so cool. And we keep in touch all the time. I'm just blown away by that. Here are these
Joe, you finish your thought. Go on.
Also,
I'm sorry.
a lot of wrestlers are fans. Dolph Ziggler from WWE recently, every week
Cool.
on Twitter, he puts up his own poster of whatever the movie is with, a little additions like his head and other people as well.
Oh, hilarious. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, man. No, Mantegna, first of all, hey, we're all getting old, but isn't it interesting that Joe Mantegna has morphed into Kenny Rogers, the way he looks now, with his long hair?
There's quite a resemblance there, yes.
When the first time I saw him like that, I'm like, the hell happened to Joe Mantegna? I don't understand. And again, we're all getting old. It's all right. But yeah,
Yep.
Joe, he's a big friend of the Score, the sports station in town.
Mhm.
And when I was working there, I wouldn't say they need to remember me, but he's good friends with Mike North and the other guys and stuff. I think Mike might have even been in acting class with David Mamet and Mantegna back in the day in the
Oh,
70s.
wow. No.
So
kidding.
yeah, crazy. That's Rich, as you know, that is the great thing about Chicago. We have our celebrities, but they really, as yourself, they're from the community, and all of us feel like this is a neighbor that we can approach, and we have the common references and the growing up and everything. And I love that about Chicago. And when people move here, they're more impressed with our neighborhoods than they are the skyscrapers and the Loop and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, that's the real Chicago, man. You go to Berwyn, you go to Roscoe Village, name your favorite neighborhood and stuff. And just, the old fashioned houses and stuff. And I'm in an apartment building that's over 100 years old. It's great. Yeah, that's the real Chicago.
Definitely. And you always get the feeling when you see these people who are from here, like, hey, that's our guy or our girl. And, and there's a sense of pride to that too. It's like, you feel good about it and you're proud of what they've done. And I've heard from people who say that, fortunately, about me as well. And it's nice to know that, people feel like you're one of them and that, they're on your side, which is, could it be better than that? I don't think so.
I don't know. I love a feature that you started doing in the last year or so, where fans are sending you these videos. And what do you call that feature when you show
They called it Spawn of Svengoolie. And when we run the clips, we call them Spawn Stars, playing off the Pawn Stars show. Yeah, we've gotten, hundreds of them, I believe. Thousands. I take that back.
Wow.
We've shown hundreds of them.
Yes.
And the cool thing is, there's a lot of people on there who, they don't think they're going to actually get a job out of it. And they're just doing it because they like it and it's fun and because they're fans of the show. And I really appreciate that. There are some people who are working a little too hard at it, as you might have noticed, but it's great to see all this different stuff. And it's funny because we were talking about the fact that, thinking, okay, somebody to add to our cast, that's a good idea. And we do have a couple people coming up that we think are going to make it. But it was funny when there'd be people who are trying to be me. And, the thing was, okay, well, we already have a me. So you might want to try to be a different character or whatever. And it's been, wow, what a wide range of stuff and just amazing. And we're probably going to continue it even once we've gotten a few more cast members. I'm thinking these fans, they'd love to probably just have the chance to be on TV and just be part of the show for that few moments. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to, work that into the the way the show works, and get away from the whole Spawn thing into just being part of Sven's group.
That sounds great. And also, by the way, I'm so glad that MeTV has expanded the show to 2.5 hours. And I wonder, because obviously that gives you more room to breathe with your parody songs and your sketches, but also, are you able to show more of the movie as a result of that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Even we've been bringing back some movies that we had previously shown, and been very fortunate to be able to add back in footage that we had to take out before, mainly for time constraints. And it's great. And that does mean that hopefully in the future, we can try to get longer films that we couldn't get before, just because we knew we'd have to really edit them severely. And that's the one thing a lot of people don't quite understand. They say, oh, you cut the movies. First of all, if you've been watching TV for any length of time on network or whatever, or even local stations, almost every movie has to be edited, for time or whatever reason. And, that's been the way it is. And a lot of times we will take out profanity, nudity, anything like that. But the thing is, we really want to make sure that we're careful in the editing. We do literally 7-second edits and 10-second edits here and there, so that we don't lose the story, so that it all makes sense, and so that the movie fits together. It's not like there used to be a 3:30 movie here in town in Chicago, and they would just drop whole scenes and even important stuff. And, we don't want to do that. We want to make it make sense. We have respect for the films, no matter what you think of them. And we want to make sure that, it's a valid thing. It isn't like, oh, you don't need this whole scene. And we've had to do that. We have. But again, we're real careful about what we take out. We have a lot of respect for the film.
I remember hearing Robert Osborne, the late Robert Osborne of Turner Classic Movies, say he remembered watching a film where it was a musical and they took out all the music. And so, it was just the comedy without the music. Well, you're the Robert Osborne of You'll Forgive Me, Schlock and Cheese in the best way. And Rich, I tell you all the time, I love the comedy, I love the songs, but what I also really love is you really inform people about old Hollywood, and you're like, look, there's Milburn Stone from the Beverly Hillbillies playing that scientist, or God, I can't remember Perry White's name from the old George Reeves Superman movie.
John Hamilton.
There you go. Yes, John Hamilton. And also, now that's interesting, Rich, that longer films, because, and again, I think of the 40s and 50s films that were programmers, they were B movies in a double feature, and a lot of them were only an hour long or an hour and 10 minutes and stuff, which is perfect for a 2-hour block. But wow, can you think of longer movies that now are either that you've already done or are coming up now that you have 2.5 hours?
Well, we've added stuff. We just ran The Uninvited with Ray Milland, and that was a movie that we had to take a lot of footage out of. And we were able to restore a great deal of stuff that we took out, which was great. And, it's not like we're going to abandon some of the, 40s type stuff and 30s type stuff, because they're great movies. The Universal classics, we're not about to go, no, we're not going to run that because they don't fill the time up. We'll find other ways to fill the time. But there's other things I'd love to get. I'd love to get War of the Worlds and The Day the Earth Stood Still. And a lot of times, it's not just time that's the problem. They're under contract elsewhere, or, they're, in some cases, quite honestly, too expensive for our network. But, I think there's a lot of chances for us to bring back stuff that we've had before. For example, the Dr. Phibes films, we're going to probably have those back next year. And when we first ran those, we had to take a lot of content out of them for time, but we'll be able to restore much more.
Have you ever spoken to, speaking of Dr. Phibes, Victoria Price, his daughter?
Oh, yeah. We've met a couple times, and we've even had her on the show a few times. She's had some great stories. We always enjoyed talking to her. A lot of times when we did the Nightmare on Chicago Street event in Elgin around Halloween. She's been there, and always a pleasure to talk to her, telling great stories about how she lost a tooth, and Vincent actually like replaced it with some terrible denture or something to try to shock her. But yeah, she's terrific.
Oh my, look what the tooth fairy left you. A fang. That's fantastic. Oh my God. Well, now speaking of Elgin, one of our great Chicago suburbs, and it's no surprise. It was so great last year, the Svengoolie special that showed you getting the skeleton key from the town of Berwyn here, and all that great local footage. And I'm sure as you've said before, there are a lot of Berwyns across the country. But of course, we think of our own Berwyn here in the Chicago burbs. And yeah, that really turned out great. It was a great special and a great honor, and it was fun to see.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and we had fun with, Jeff Daniel Phillips as the driver of the hearse. He was just so funny. And we've known him for a while now, too, another great Hollywood friend. And yeah, and it was so nice. We had a great crew that came in. They actually imported a crew that one of the people here had worked with before. And, they were all terrific, and we came up with a lot of fun ideas for it. And, shot it in a flashback weekend. Just a terrific thing. And then, of course, the actual visit to Berwyn and Svengoolie Day in Berwyn. And it was really nice. I mean, very heartwarming. And the fact that, here are all these people that came to this park in Berwyn just, to take part. And, it's very flattering.
It had to happen, Rich. Absolutely. I think that's great. And maybe this is a great white whale that may be out of reach. Have you guys tried to approach Roger Corman? I cannot believe he's 95. And I know his wife is his co-producer as well. But I don't know. I fell into a YouTube rabbit hole and have been watching more recent Corman interviews. I mean, that guy, like George Burns, still going strong in his 90s, or Carl Reiner or Mel Brooks. Have you tried to, get him on the show?
We have not so far. And usually a lot of times the people that we run into are when we're at a convention with them, and we have never been at a convention he was at the same time. I'd love to talk to him, and it'll be a lot of fun because, I mean, look, it's Roger Corman, let's face it. How many of his movies have we shown? Quite a few. In the time that I've been doing this type of show, we've run any number of his shows, and it would be great. It would be a perfect guest. And again, people say, oh, he's 95, is it? And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, but he's still, sharp as a tack. And it would be great to talk to him.
I bet. Absolutely. And again, I love watching on YouTube. I don't know if you're able to show some of the old stuff. Well, it was Weigel still. I was thinking of, like, I remember back in the early 80s when John Pertwee, the third Doctor Who, was in town, and he pops out of your coffin and you guys have a great conversation. And, of course, our dear departed Gilbert Gottfried, people like that. But, I'm really glad, again, I love the tapeworms that now are able to upload their stuff onto YouTube. And I was watching, you did a Beretta parody.
Oh, yeah. Berwyn. Yes. That was, that stuff from WFLD. It was not from Weigel. So a lot of that stuff we really don't have the rights to show, unfortunately. We got to use some of it in the special, fortunately. But for the most part, we're not allowed to use it on the show. But yeah, I'm amazed sometimes that people come up with this stuff, and I wonder, how did they actually record it? Was it off, VHS or whatever? But yeah, I mean, I think back, and it's like, I've been doing this since 1979. And that's an awful lot of stuff.
And that's why we're thrilled that you're still doing it and doing it at the level. And also, honestly, man, you up your game. You guys up your game. I mean, I really love that old stuff. And as I've told you many times, I was a fan of Jerry G. Bishop as well, the first Svengoolie, and your partner in crime as far as radio and TV. But no, it is great to see that these tapeworms are out there. I'm with you, man. I mean, it's, I mean, some of this, I mean, God, they have Jerry G. Bishop footage on on YouTube and things. And I tell people that all the time that are fans of yours. And I'm like, you got to see Jerry too, because, Jerry, and a completely different characterization of
Yeah.
Svengoolie, but still fun. And also, man, I don't even know, Rich, beyond yourself, Joe Bob Briggs, I don't even know if Elvira really hosts a traditional monster show. I know Cassandra's still out there and doing appearances and stuff, but I'm really glad that the Weigel Company and Neil Saban and people like that understood the value of showing these movies, but having a fun horror host to just add to the entertainment. And really, I mean, do you know of other cities that are doing it like the way you do? Again, you're now national and have been for over 10 years. But, yeah, I mean, are they potentially, have you met newer local people? Or I know there's some online people that do it too.
Yeah, well, that was mainly it for a long time. It was the various online hosts, and I've met some of them. One thing that's happened is with our success, it has encouraged local stations in various markets to say, hey, we could do that. And they have, gotten their own hosts. And there are some over-the-air ones that are doing it now, which is great. And there's still people, of course, online who do their shows on there. And it's always funny to me because, they need to understand movie rights, which a lot of them don't. And it's like, you could get sued for running that, even if it's just online. But, there's lessons to be learned there, certainly.
Absolutely. And it's not human beings. It's, algorithms of YouTube recognizing that it's copywritten material that they've incorporated in their own videos and stuff. No, I hear you, man. You know what I love? Speaking of tapeworms, I've found so many old variety show specials and TV shows from the 60s. A bunch of I saw a black and white Bob Hope one. How about these Beatles? Let me tell you, crap like that. And it's funny. And when I've been incorporating on my YouTube channel, and so far I've not gotten any copywritten struck. Maybe I shouldn't talk about this, but I love the network announcement before a show of the Lucy Show will not be seen tonight, so that we may bring you the following special. And they have the slide. I have an Ironside one. I have a Rockford Files Chico and the Man one. And mostly to entertain people our age and stuff that remember these things. And it's like, okay, I wasn't expecting Andy Griffith, but now I'm getting Word Balloon. That's great.
Yeah,
Stuff
that's
like
great.
that.
Old Red Skelton shows. Oh my God. I know for a long time, he owned them all, and he would not allow them to run unless they were run in their entirety. Would not let them be edited. I think at this point, whoever has the rights to his estate or whatever has maybe, reneged on that a little bit, and they can put that stuff out. But it's great to see that kind of stuff. Oh my gosh. People that, most people are sitting there and they'd have to Google who it is because they don't recognize them. But it's fun stuff. And again, the wide range of guests that they'd have on, hey, here's Gary Cooper right here. And it's like, what? Gary Cooper? And he's doing a comedy bit. It's amazing stuff to me. Jack Benny stuff. I love Jack Benny stuff. And it's so great to see those. And, I see he's another one, doing those specials all the way close to, the time that he expired. Just amazing. And, mixing it up with younger talent. And it's great to see that, they had the respect for him.
You probably remember this one-hit wonder band, but I speaking of Jack Benny, I remember when he had Tony DeFranco and the DeFranco family.
Sure, yes. I had them in the same category as the Cowsills, kind of. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Every now and then you do Me TV radio bits, and right like around didn't you they have you doing like a bunch of interstitials between the songs and stuff and doing some bits?
Yeah, there have been times when I've done it, especially around Halloween.
Oh,
and
sure.
I think maybe April Fool's Day, maybe we've done that too. But yeah, every so often, it's interesting because we always refer to it as the station in a closet, because it's really housed all the, the electronics and stuff in just a very small room here. And, playing great stuff and, music that I enjoy and I love hearing again.
Oh, yeah.
It's great, yeah, and it's nice to be able to take part in it once in a while. Again, it's not a station that has DJs,
Right.
but I always love doing radio in any form, so it's always nice to get involved in that.
No, I hear you, man. I don't know if you know him because he works over at MeTV. He's a sales guy, a good friend of mine from college radio and working at the Score and WXRT. My friend Bill Kavanaugh, and he is so positive about. He sells both TV time and radio ads, and he loves to play this game with me and with potential clients. Where he's like, who plays the most Steely Dan music in Chicago? And people might say, well, probably WXRT. No, it's us. We play 30 songs. Or, here's a great, woman, Helen Reddy. And it's like, all right, maybe Delta Dawn and I Am Woman. And it's like, oh, no, we play like 7 songs. And it's like, Jesus, I don't even remember 7 Helen Reddy.
Leave me alone.
Of course, leave me alone. See, shame on me. Well done.
No, I was
well
just saying,
done.
would you leave me alone? Because
I understand. I know. I don't want to keep you. You're right. But also, this, Rich, forgive me for strolling down memory lane with you, but Top 40 when we were kids was so great because Mantovani and the Beatles were on the same Top 40, or Sinatra or Dean Martin would knock the Rolling Stones off at #1 with Strangers in the Night, or Everybody Loves Somebody,
Yeah, and Lawrence Welk, Calcutta. It's like, what? It was amazing because, it was such a wide range of music that, sometimes, for example, I'll listen to Sirius XM and, it'll be on the 60s channel and I'll hear stuff and I keep thinking, this was the stuff that was on rock stations? How did that even work? Amazing. And it seems like, that's kind of a way that we kind of broadened our appreciation of music back then. I don't think it's the same now, certainly. You're not hearing some things, on the rap stations, you don't hear.
Well, sure. Good news, boys. We just beat Country Joe and the Fish with Calcutta. It's like, okay. Again, that was fun. And I absolutely, it's a lot of things. Everyone's got their stations. I understand. And that's great. Everyone's got their music and anything you like. God, as you know, podcasting now. That's where I live and breathe and everything. Sure. No, it's great. And again, Rich, I know how busy you guys are. Is podcasting something you had ever considered? Again, your love of audio and radio and stuff.
Oh, we've talked about it, but as you said, right now we're so busy that I don't think I'd be able to find the time to do it. I love doing these things, of course. And, I love radio. I always enjoyed doing radio. One of my fondest times, besides working with Jerry at WMAQ doing mornings and being like, his producer and maybe 85% of the gag people that he would talk to on the air, I loved doing mornings at WCKG. And it was, I met some great friends there. We got to do all sorts of different shtick. And, it was the fun kind of radio that I don't think a lot of people do anymore, because we would have, we'd do bits and, the takeoffs on things. And it was bringing these different characters. We just have, a spot or a commercial to read. And one of the idiot characters that I invented would be the person to read it. And there was a lot of ad-libbing and just, it was a lot of fun. And I really treasured the time that I had doing that.
Well, you'll forgive my presumption, Rich, because I can't hold a candle to you, but my 10 years at the Score and even a few bits at WXRT, guys like you were my inspiration. And especially coming to the Score where everyone else were such minutia sports people. And I'm like, let's make fun of Jerry Reinsdorf. He's got a goofy voice, and they'd let me do it. And I did my parody songs and my sketches and stuff.
Sure.
And yeah, man, because again, I grew up with guys like you that were doing that kind of fun radio. And thankfully in the 90s, it was still possible. Mm-hmm. I think the sports stations, I don't pay, and with no malice, I don't pay attention to ESPN 1000 here in town or the Score, and they may still do music. and little bits here and there, fake commercials or whatever.
Mhm.
But they certainly let me like be a knucklehead, and they paid me pretty well for it for about 10 years. So
Yeah, well, that's great, and that's, very flattering to hear that I was an influence on anybody. But yeah, that's just it. I don't know that, people say, well, why don't you get back on the radio? And it's like, I don't know of any station in town that would let me do the kind of things that I do at this point. I've been banned from WGN, so.
what happened? I had no idea. What?
Yeah. And all right, I probably shouldn't be telling this, but when the Next Star people took over, the guy in charge got very angry because, how many times was I a guest on different shows and they'd mention my name, and I even did fill in there, but he got angry because our show is, competition to what he runs on their antenna TV thing. And
Sure.
He laid down the law that no one's supposed to mention my name. I was not allowed to ever be a guest again. And that, and of course, that's really helped his Hazel reruns on Saturday night.
Hey man, we need our Don DeFore fix. It's awesome, and you'll appreciate this. When Mike North, we had our TV show on WJYS. I don't even know what UHF channel it was, and
Yeah.
it's like 90% of it is infomercials. And we would do our show on Friday nights, and our lead-in were Donna Reed reruns.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And nothing delighted me more as we told our live audience, okay, as North would go, all right, you got to watch this show. It's on Friday nights at 6:30. And I'd go right after Donna Reed. And it's like, I just love that Donna Reed was our lead-in. And no, I hear you, man. And God, of course, MeTV's library of shows. And it's funny how they bounce back and forth. And MeTV might have the Monkees for a couple of years. Then it jumps to Antenna TV. But, I hear you, Rich. Ron Santo, the wonderful third baseman for the Cubs and great color man for the Cub games.
Yeah.
He would, and this is before Next Star owned WGN. And he would start talking and he'd go, on the score today, they said, and all of a sudden it would go silent. And Ron told us, he's like, the producers are like, Ron, the bosses do not want you to mention the score. That's our competition. And then, all right, Ronnie, we're in the third inning.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way the business works, I guess.
I guess.
I just thought it was funny because I have such a long history with WGN radio. And, I got a lot of friends who work there.
Sure.
My connections to them goes all the way back to the 80s when I was doing fill-in stuff there. And, got to do stuff with Bob Collins and, Spike O'Dell and those people. And, I was a part of that place on and off. And, well, at this point, whatever, it's fine. I can understand if they consider me competition, then God bless America.
I hear you, man. Well, and also, and this is again, I think and it's probably the case in other big cities, but the broadcast community, everybody knew each other. I mean, as I've told you before, when you got the chance to interview Bill Jackson, the wonderful children's host, BJ and Dirty Dragon. And, God, over the years, I got to meet Roy Leonard. I got to meet Wally Phillips and all these legends of local radio. And that is the other thing. And I love this about your show, that back then, every city was its own real broadcast powerhouse and very important, not just to the market, but even extending and to the other parts of the state. And it's just, oh God, in radio myself, Dave Baum became a really good friend and others like that, it's like, oh my God, these were like yourself, Rich, truly, it means a lot. Like I said, that you always come back and that we are good acquaintances and stuff that, it's like, holy Christ, I've been watching you guys or listening to you guys for years. And now I'm part of the community, and it really, it felt good. And it's, I don't know. I mean, I forgive the tangent about this, but it's like, cool. We all understand competition, but really it's like, okay, but we all do our own thing. And it's like, we're all neighbors and everything. It's not a big deal. But again, that's talent. We don't need to dwell on it if you don't want to.
But... and we appreciate these other people who are part of our community. And yeah, I mean, I run into people all the time on other channels, and they have no problem. Channel 7, every so often they ask me to be a guest on things, and I'm certainly happy to do it because there are a lot of people there. At all these stations, I've got a lot of friends. When you've been around in this business as long as I have, you've run into so many of these people, worked with some of them, and it's like its own fraternity or sorority or whatever.
Yeah. Rich, have you ever I would imagine that you have won some local Emmys, or I certainly hope so. And have you ever attended back in the day? I mean they likely still do it. I know now the Emmys are more regional and they're not just Chicago. Again, the tapeworms out there, I know at the very least there's a Chicago Emmys Award broadcast where Bob Newhart was the host, and of course another local guy. I remember when Rita Moreno was hosting.
Wow.
And oh god, Marianne Childers was in the score, one of our former ABC local news anchors, and forgive me, I hope this doesn't come off sexist in any way, but Marianne was dressed to the nines, and she was in this amazing form-fitting dress, and even Rita Moreno, the Spitfire herself, was like, wow, that's a dress. And Marianne came in to co-host at the score, and she's like, I happen to get nominated for the silly stuff I did on Mike's TV show, which was incredible. And I didn't win, but it was a great, as they say, it's wonderful to be nominated, and it was. But she's like, hey, I saw you got nominated, way to go. And I said, I gotta ask you, that one night when Rita was hosting the Emmys, and you came out and it was a snakeskin pattern dress, and it's and Marianne is like Larry Bird in terms of like one of the absolute whitest white people you'll ever meet. Like, she doesn't need powder on her fist, and she got bright red, and and this was like 17 years after the fact or whatever, because it was early 80s. and I'm like, that was so funny to see. And she said, and again, I don't feel like I'm telling stories out of school because the person I'm going to mention has passed away. But apparently, she's like, John Drury made me promise that when he retires, I will wear that dress. And I said, oh, that's great. You still have it. And she said, oh, yeah. And then she kind of dropped her voice, and she's like, and it still fits. And I'm like, way to go, Marianne.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, the only reason I bring it up is, that's the kind of familiarity and friendliness that the broadcast community has in Chicago, and I believe it still exists. I'm kind of unplugged since leaving WBBM radio a couple years ago and stuff, but and that was fun. Just being there and meeting people like Pat Cassidy and stuff, who again I've heard for years. And he's like, "Oh, John, I'm really glad you're here. I listened to you on the score." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks, man." But enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think of me?
I think you're great. You kidding me?
Easy line, that. That's a classic Maury Amsterdam kind of exchange. Well, Rich, I'll let you go. Is there what's coming up on Sven this weekend? Do you know? Is Jim still with you? Does he know?
When is this going to air? I hate to be
tomorrow.
Oh, then we've got Boris Karloff in The Haunted Strangler. It's from the 1950s. And it shows you that he still had it, even though he was in like the second half of his career. And coming up, we've got stuff like Hammer Studios' The Shadow of the Cat. We've got a great, kind of schlocky one, The Black Scorpion. A lot of fun stuff coming up. So,
is that an old movie, or is that the Joan Severance?
Oh, no. It's not that, though.
It's not dirty. That wasn't a dirty movie. That was like a superhero movie.
She was a superhero. I remember that.
Yeah.
And she had a nice outfit, definitely.
Yes,
her and Marianne Childers
fits, I'm sure.
Switched outfits along the way. But this is like a 1950s one where they go down to Mexico, and after an earthquake, there are giant scorpions that have emerged from beneath the surface to cause havoc. So,
when you put the Svengoolie robot in there, and maybe I'm misremembering, have you ever had any of those Santo Mexican wrestler movies? And they call him Samson when they would translate them to English and stuff. But those are kind of crazy monster movies in a very fun way. And I know the Mystery Science Theater guys did, I believe, like Samson and the Aztec Women or something like that. Have you shown those kinds of movies?
No,
as well?
actually, we haven't, and even back in the WFLD days, I don't think we ever ran any of those. The problem these days is finding ones that are good enough quality, because our bosses really want things to be in good enough shape that they'll look good on digital TV. Unfortunately,
Certainly.
there's a lot of stuff that's been kind of remastered into better quality copies. But it's hard to get some stuff. There are certain movies we'd love to run, but they are not going to look good. And it's important to our station here that we run stuff that looks clear and crisp.
I'm going to make a request for a guest, and I think I told you this when we would exchange our Twitter messages back and forth. Gary Conway, I Was a Teenage Frankenstein and How to Make a Monster. He's still with us, and I did a great audio interview with him. And man, I think he has so many great stories. And of course, Land of the Giants. I mean, what a crazy fun guy, which I believe is on MeTV at like 2 or 3 in the morning on Saturday. And I mean, Gary razor sharp still, fantastic stories. Obviously great memories of the producer Erwin Allen. But yeah, I would love to see you interview him, because I know you would have more knowledge and guys like Jim and people working for you to ask even better questions than I was able to ask him.
Yeah, so, it would be fun. I don't know if you know this, but if you saw Alex Ross's nice Fantastic Four book, he kind of based Reed Richards on the look of Gary.
Yes, Gary was thrilled. No, you're absolutely right. And in fact, Alex's people are like, "You want to talk to Gary Conway?" I'm like, "Of course I do." And I had Alex as well on about the book. And Gary's like, "Hey, I got to make my Marvel movie." He goes, "I never thought I'd make it." So he considers Fantastic Four full circle his Marvel movie. Have you read it? Did you read Alex's?
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't it great?
It's really good.
Rich,
been a big fan of his work for so long, and feel really honored that that we're friends. And again, going back to my 60s comic books, Fantastic Four, always loved those. And seeing this, because he really captures a lot of the feel from back in those eras. And it's always very impressive to me how he does that.
And has that wonderful painting paperback cover quality to his art. And I mean, and rightfully so, Alex's paintings have been in the Norman Rockwell Museum, and God, they just had, it may still even be happening right now. I want to say the Elmhurst Museum has a Ross collection this year. No, Sal, his art rep and manager and stuff, we're really good friends. And Alex has become a nice acquaintance as well. Comes back to Word Balloon. And again, I point to the Chris Jones cover, which I assume is the main cover for Svengoolie Lost in Time, Part 1. I don't know. Is Part 2 also going to be called Lost in Time? Do you know?
No, it's going to be a totally different story. It's set up by the very end of this book, where I go to the door and say, "Oh no, it's you." But yeah, it's going to be a whole different story, going in a different direction. And, I can't give anything away right now, because we're still, firming up some of the ideas that are going to be in it. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm happy we're getting to do a second one. And, we'll see. Maybe after that, depending on how that's received, maybe there'll be more in the future. But if that's as far as it goes, I'm very happy to have done it.
The way it's flying off the shelves, Rich, honestly, I'm sure that Dan will talk to Frank, and maybe, I certainly hope so. Again, the first issue turned out so wonderful. And I noticed that cliffhanger ending. So I was curious what could be next. So in a couple months, hopefully, we'll get part 2 of Sven's adventures with Frank Miller Presents, and all these fantastic comic book creators that made this book possible, and your wonderful writers and yourself doing this. That had to be cool, being a comic book kid, finally getting to write. I don't know if you had that kind of input in the DC book that you did.
I had a fair amount. Yeah.
Okay.
Because there were certain ideas in it that were my idea. and certain directions that we went in. And I got to suggest a lot of the dialogue as we went along too. So it was, and again, like I said, since those are the first comics I read as a kid, as far as superheroes, to actually be in there and interacting with Batman and Superman and the Joker, it was great, and it meant a lot to me.
I know the feeling, man. My friend Brian Bendis, who was writing Spider-Man, put me in Spider-Man in a couple
Oh,
issues.
cool.
So yeah, I know,
Nice.
isn't that great? And really, I'm sure showing your family and friends that might also know your love of comics and stuff. And yeah, I get it. Believe me, I get it. I haven't written anything yet, but I stress yet. But we'll see what happens. But all right, Frank Miller presents Lost in Time, this wonderful collection of stories featuring all your favorite Svengoolie characters, written by Rich and the Svengoolie guys, and drawn by some of our favorite artists. Well done, dude. And I'm so glad. And it's very much deserved, well deserved. And Rich, as always, I love when we talk. I'll bug you. I might bug you one more time this year.
Sure.
I always tell you and Jim, you guys are so kind to let me moderate the panels. And I'm like, God, I really hope, and truly, you guys have been amazing. I'll do it anytime you want, but I certainly hope I'm not like someone like, oh, I'd like to moderate your panel. Oh, Suntress is doing it again. All right, whatever.
No. Believe me, John, it's always a pleasure to work with you, and you do such a great job. I think anybody who's been to those panels at C2E2 can see, that you know your stuff and you know how to do an interview, and and just the fact that it's two friends talking again, and it always is pretty entertaining. And I think one of both our favorite parts is when we start getting the questions from the audience, some of which make sense, some, well,
I am Alfred to your Batman, sir. I am there to hold your cape and do what I can to keep the buses running on time and everything. So no, it's a genuine pleasure. And really, man, it always means a lot that you come back to Word Balloon. So great conversation as always today, Rich. And Jim, thank you as well. But thanks so much as always.
well, thank you. And, I appreciate any time that you invite us to do something with you. And I'll take this opportunity to thank everybody out there who has made the comic a success. I really appreciate that people have taken it and run with it and feel that it's worthwhile. And that means a lot to me as well.